This is Scotty Reid with a Black Talk Radio News Report. P. Diddy, Sean Puffy Combs is in the news for stating that the black vote is not for free. And many are interpreting that as a dig at the presumptive Democratic nominee, Joe Biden, although there hasn't been a convention yet. And so it's not even known at this point. I do not believe actually that he has enough delegates to claim the Democratic nomination at this point. But facts don't matter, especially to a lot of corporate news, media pundits, and Joe Biden is being put out there as the presumed nominee that the Democrats will have face off against President Donald Trump in the November 2020 elections. So the XXLmag.com, which is typically an outlet that's focusing on hip-hop news, and obviously Sean Puffy Combs got his start in hip-hop before he became a business mogul. But he's saying he's being quoted as saying he won't vote for Joe Biden if he doesn't change quality of life for the black and brown community, is the headline coming from XXL magazine. But let's take a look at the quotes attributed to Sean Combs. I don't think anybody can argue with those. Seems pretty logical. Common sense, especially, in the area of politics. P. Diddy is quoted as saying the black vote is not going to be for free. We're gonna have to see some promises. We're going to have to understand what kind of deal we're getting out of. What are we getting in return for our vote? Because nothing has changed in America for black America. And in order for us to vote for Biden, we can't be taken for granted like we always are because we're supposed to be Democrats or because people are afraid of Trump, is the first quote that I have for you on what Sean Puffy Combs said about don't assume that I'm going to vote for Joe Biden. Joe Biden's platform, I don't know what the rhyme or reason is that he attracted so many black boomer votes in South Carolina, which seem to have a cascading effect throughout the South. But at the same time, I don't always accept the corporate media narrative and blaming older black voters for why Joe Biden just came out of nowhere, offering nothing, promising nothing, but more of the same. And so I think there should be, and there will not be, obviously, but there should have been some investigation into the Democratic primary. Lots of shenanigans, for lack of a better word, have occurred, like the Democratic Party in New York canceling the New York primaries. And this follows the 2016 election where they purged, New York City Democrats purged over 60,000 black and brown voters for the 2016 election in a district that was projected to go heavily for Bernie Sanders. So now we have New York canceling their primary, and it's just assumed because black voters typically do vote 80%, black male voters and black female voters much higher, 90+% always just vote straight tickets for Democrats. And the rank and file, or I should say the grassroots voters, is not really in a position and thus far hasn't really been forming large coalitions to where they have a seat at the table. It's basically whatever the Democrats, whatever bones they want to throw us, or and it's often just been in the form of black skin. And what I'm talking about is what is known as mascots, for lack of a better word. Right now, we get these mascots in these high positions, and sometimes that is supposed to make us satisfied with our position in the United States as a group, while many of us suffer in prison, which is legalized slavery, and are victims of police shootings and police brutality and just so many ills in this society. It's just racism and racial outcomes just across the board for especially black people, but other non-white people as well. Sean Puffy Combs is making a whole lot of sense. But the election season started actually last year. And so, there's still time. Biden isn't promising anything just far. Right now, he's entangled in fighting off a very credible rape allegation from his time in the 90s as a senator. And it's really making the Democratic Party look bad, and those who have endorsed Joe Biden, and the way they are just simply dismissing the mounting evidence being put forth to support the rape allegation made by former Biden Senate staffer Scotty Reid. So, but P. Diddy went on to say about the black vote, don't take it for granted. It's whoever's going to take care of our community, he continued. Our vote is not for free. Let's see if we can pull that up. Whoever wants to make a deal is business at this point. We can't trust politicians. So we want to know very clearly, just like Trump made it clear that he wanted to build a wall. Biden needs to make it clear that he's going to change the lives and quality of life of black and brown people, or else he can't get the vote. And I will hold the vote hostage if I have to. Strong words there from P. Diddy. He certainly has the financial means to purchase ads, to come up with ads, first of all, produce political ads, start a political action committee. I mean, he's a billionaire. We see what Michael Bloomberg did with his money, so to influence the election. So those are strong words coming from Mr. Sean Combs, and let's hope that he'll back it up, and not only that, be joined in his stance by others. Okay, Joe Biden hasn't offered anything, and he has a lot, as they say, explaining to do with the Biden crime bill. This is the reason why we have so many black men and Hispanic men, non-white men, and poor whites in prison, as the 13th Amendment allows for the practice of prison slavery in this day and age, and in this year 2020. So what Joe Biden helped create that, as well as a lot of student debt, and his treatment, and the how Anita Hill was treated when he was in charge of those hearings for Clarence Thomas. And I mean, he just really has a lot of baggage, and I just don't understand why so many reportedly black voters jumped to back him starting in South Carolina. It just didn't make any sense. Again, lots of shenanigans are suspected there. So the last two men standing vying for the spot of the Democratic presidential candidate were Joe Biden and Senator Bernie Sanders, who dropped out of the race for the presidency back in April. Senator Sanders endorsed Biden a week later. And so there you have it. I don't see that he is saying anything wrong whatsoever. I think that P. Diddy is spot on, and he's coming with some strong words. I hope that he backs him up. He certainly has the financial resources to back them up. But we've gotten nothing from Joe Biden's campaign by the way of any kind of promises. He hasn't adopted any of the popular programs, speaking of Bernie Sanders. And let's go ahead and pull up, as an abolitionist, a lot of people know that I also host and produce New Abolitionist Radio, and have done so since 2013, which has put in the focus on the 13th Amendment that I mentioned earlier, and the loophole that it has that allows for prison slavery. And Bernie Sanders had a policy and proposal that would effectively end prison slavery without the monumental task of initiating and becoming part of a constitutional convention to repeal the 13th Amendment. That's really what needs to happen. But in the meantime, in practice, you can stop it in practice. And Bernie Sanders had what he called his prisoner bill rights. And if you're interested in hearing this, I certainly would put it forth to Joe Biden. Can you promise me that you would effectively end prison slavery, the very prison slavery that you helped create in the states as well as the federal government? So the Sanders campaign put forth a prisoner bill of rights that was also put forth by prisoners themselves during the, I believe it was the 2018 prison strike, national prison strike. And there have been many different strikes, whether they were national or in different states, focusing on the inhumane conditions of prison slavery in the United States today. So this Bill of Rights that Bernie Sanders adopted, ending solitary confinement. Solitary confinement is a form of torture and unconstitutional, plain and simple. Access to free medical care in prisons and jails, including professional and evidence-based substance abuse and trauma-informed mental health treatment. Incarcerated trans people have access to all the health care they need, access to free educational and vocational training. This includes ending the ban on Pell Grants that the Biden crime bill put in place, but repeal that, and this includes ending the ban on Pell Grants for all incarcerated people without any exceptions. Living wages and safe working conditions, including maximum work hours for all incarcerated people for their labor. The right to vote, as they do in Vermont and a couple of other states, but all voting age Americans must have the right and meaningful access to vote, whether they are incarcerated or not. We will re-enfranchise the right to vote to the millions of Americans who have had their vote taken away by a felony conviction. Ending prison gerrymandering, and this is very important in politics. Ending gerrymandering we hear a lot about, but what about prison gerrymandering? Ending prison gerrymandering, ensuring incarcerated people are counted in their communities, not where they are incarcerated. The establishment of an Office of Prisoner Civil Rights and Civil Liberties, for all those people who like to talk about freedom and justice, within the Department of Justice to investigate civil rights complaints from incarcerated individuals and provide independent oversight to make sure that prisoners are housed in safe, healthy environments. Protection from sexual abuse and harassment. Because of rape, this is in prison slavery. It's the reason why males actually lead the category of victims in rape. Okay, because of prison slavery. So this policy calls for the protection from sexual abuse and harassment, including mandatory federal prosecution of prison staff who engage in such misconduct, because a lot of prison guards, male and female, sexually exploit, take advantage, and rape prisoners, male and female. Access to their families, including unlimited visits, phone calls, and video calls. And last but not least, a determination for the most appropriate setting for people with disabilities and safe, accessible conditions for people with disabilities in prisons and in jail. So is Joe Biden willing to end prison slavery, the practice of prison slavery, if not repealing the Constitution, the 13th, and leading that effort? But people need relief right now. And certainly a prisoner's Bill of Rights would end prison slavery. Joe Biden, no one in his campaign is advocating, and these demands are not being put to him by anyone, whether you are advocating for student debt relief, whether you are advocating for free tuition at state colleges and universities, whether you're advocating for Medicare for all. Other than Medicare for all, these demands aren't being put to Joe Biden. He's already said he's not willing to do Medicare for all, or as Hillary Clinton called for, universal health care. So when we look at the black vote, I think that there is a lack of leadership, and perhaps Sean Puffy Combs is trying to provide some of that leadership, although he should have injected himself earlier in the process. All right, this has been Scotty Reid with a Black Talk Radio News Report. Please continue to support the production of independent black media. You can make a tax-deductible donation today to the Black Talk Media Project. Peace and blessings to all.